Hello, I'm Rambharat. We're here on TDT and joined by Talk City 91.1 FM and TDT Live online. Many questions and concerns continue to be raised about the deadly COVID-19 that seems to be spreading fast and furious. So far, here in Trinidad and Tobago, there have been no cases of the virus, but steps are being taken to safeguard the nation. Despite this, it's expected we won't be spared the impact. For instance, the factory workshops of the world have come to a halt, threatening business, commerce, and everyday life. Globally, reports are that there will be more signs on the store shelves saying out of stock. Trinidad and Tobago's imports. We import approximately $6 billion in food annually, a significant portion from North America. Here to discuss any possible impact on our food security and the economy, as well as plans to mitigate such, our Minister of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries, Clarence Rambharat, and management scientist, economist, and lecturer, Dr. Kevin Fleary. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Minister Rambharat, you have indicated that currently there is no threat to our food security as it pertains to COVID-19. However, questions and concerns continue to loom around our food security. What additional assurances do you have at this time?
Well, in monitoring coronavirus, I think around the world and locally, of course, our experience has been the information continues to change. We continue to get updates, and a lot of what is happening around the world, of course, influences Trinidad and Tobago. So I said yesterday that at this time, there is no evidence of anything that would really interrupt our food supply. But having said that, I also flagged 4 critical areas for us. The first is the link between coronavirus and live animals. Now, a lot of people may have forgotten that from the outset, coming out of China, there was the issue of the link between the origins of the virus and wild animals in China. And the discussion has moved away from that. But on Monday, there was a determination that a dog belonging to somebody who had been tested positive for coronavirus also tested positive for coronavirus, and it's detailed in an article that appeared in the London Telegraph today. But on Monday, I got that information from the vets in our ministry. Now that is very significant. Now, at this time, we do not know if anything about the movement of the virus from human to animal or animal to human, but we know for a fact that a domesticated animal has tested positive in a scenario where the owner had previously tested positive. Now, anything that impacts live animals is something of issue not only to our ministry, but to the country, because apart from having animals in Trinidad, having a vibrant poultry sector, for example, that makes a significant contribution not only to agriculture GDP, but to local employment. Anything that affects animals and poultry in particular is something that we have to pay attention to, particularly as a Ministry of Agriculture. The second thing is the link between coronavirus and shipping on the whole. We know that shipments out of China have been impacted. We know there have been reductions in what China is shipping out. Some of that may be destined to Trinidad and Tobago. So whether or not it is linked to agriculture, we have to pay attention to what is happening with shipping out of China and in other parts of the world. The third is the link between coronavirus and imported food. Now, shipping is one aspect of imported food. But if we find ourselves in situations, for example, Florida has declared a state of emergency in relation to the virus. California has done the same. 2 significant food-producing areas in the United States. Are there imports from those 2 states that we would not have access to in Trinidad and Tobago? There's been nothing so far to indicate that it has interfered with the export of the food supply, but it's something that we have to monitor, not only in those 2 states, across the United States, from areas where we import food, in Canada, which has already had the impact of the coronavirus, out of Europe and out of the Far East. And the last area, the fourth area, would be coronavirus and the impact on our local food production. Some of our inputs, for example, some of the chemicals, fertilizers, in some cases, equipment, seeds come out of China. And if even those things that the inputs that do not come out of China may be impacted by problems in global shipping. So those are the 4 areas. 1, coronavirus and live animals, it is real. A dog being tested positive already. Corona and shipping around the world. Corona and shipments of food supplies into Trinidad and Tobago, particularly from the US. And fourthly, the shipping of inputs required for local food production. Those are the 4 areas that I continue to monitor and the ministry continue to monitor.
Dr. Fleary, as the Minister said, we have not seen any immediate threat to food security. You have spent a significant time in China studying. You teach process and operations management, logistics, supply chain, and that sort of thing. What sort of impacts can we expect? The business community is saying in the next 4 to 6 weeks, we can see something. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I would like to highlight something that the Minister also spoke to. In regards to the coronavirus, it needs a live host, either human or animal, to grow. What that means as far as the supply chain is concerned, if your supply chain is heavily dependent on human intervention, that means that you're going to have a slowdown of your supply chain to contain the virus. So in China, for example, I reached out to some of my colleagues in China to ask them what is happening on the ground, because that is very important. What they are saying is that they focus on 3 things. In the first instance, containment, because the longer the coronavirus is spreading, is the more harm it is doing to a going concern. Businesses cannot operate with the coronavirus. The second concern is the management of the society, because as the society closed down, as factories shut down, what happens is right now colleagues of mine are home 2 months without work. So how are they supposed to have groceries and all these things? So there's a cost to that. So that is something that we need to consider as well, right? And the third factor to consider is the rebound after the coronavirus. I believe that there are opportunities to be derived, that yes, the coronavirus is a serious problem and we need to, in the first instance, focus on the containment of the virus and its impact on businesses, but other countries are also doing so. So how we rebound will determine whether or not we are successful as a country. For example, because the Chinese economy supplies the majority of this region, in the absence of that supply, can our manufacturers meet that need? There will be pent-up demand that our manufacturers may be able to renegotiate some terms and conditions to help our economy grow coming out of the coronavirus. So these are some things I would like us to consider.
All right. And what areas do you see becoming most susceptible at this time? You're seeing tourism.
Yeah, well, anything to do with human intervention, right? Because if we use China's experience as a case study, what you would find is that economies outside of sectors that use technology are heavily affected. So right now, online education, gaming, entertainment, these type of industries are the e-commerce in China. These type of industries, and this e-commerce is specific to items that are not meat-based, right? And these are the sectors that are thriving. All other sectors have slowed down because right now, as you know, China is considered the manufacturing center of the world, and it is supported by over 300 million migrant workers that have to stay home, right? Because cities are asked to remain at home, and it's a go slow.
Minister, in response to what Dr. Fleary said, in light of his colleagues spending 2 months at home with the inability to access groceries, what sort of conversations do you think we should be having in the event that we are faced with something similar?
Well, I saw a discussion already started about work from home. Now, if there is one inadvertent good coming out of this, would be the need for us, something I've advocated on a personal basis for a long time. We need to explore different ways of working and working more productively. Would this impact? Well, the normal flu that passes through the country at certain times of the year impacts productivity. You find people having to stay home. The Sahara dust, for example, I've seen the impact of it in the workplace. So something like coronavirus, and not the coming of the virus, but even the threat of the virus starts to impact your productivity as people start to prepare to make adjustments. We have to keep the country running, so that technology would be one way that we would be able to get some things done. Some companies in the multinationals and some other companies, the banking sector, for example, would have business continuity plans for situations like this, because of course we're always anticipating something like flooding or something like the hurricane season. We're always prepared for that. Of course, those are relatively short-term events compared to a risk that we cannot put a timeline to. I think the from a business point of view and from a government planning point of view and an individual planning point of view, the challenges are, one, we do not know when this will come. We have a feeling that there'll be some impact to Trinidad and Tobago, even if nobody tests positive. And the impact of that has to be in the slowdown of traffic into the country, whether it be in the form of tourism or people who come to support the energy sector, for example. I understand from what I've heard, Houston had its first positive test for coronavirus. Houston is a major part of the energy hub in the region. There's a lot of traffic coming out of Houston to Trinidad, to Venezuela, to Guyana. So if we have restrictions on the movement of persons from Houston or persons to Houston, we will see the impact on the energy sector right away. So even without a positive test in the country, we know there will be some business interruption based on the places we do business with. Secondly, if there is a positive test in the country, then it would test our health system, but it would also test our preparedness. And the Minister of Health has gone into great depths to explain the readiness of the country. But whatever happens, we do not know what is the outside date for this. How is it going to come under control in China? Well, it's not in China alone. Is it going to escalate in the United States? The trend has been for more and more positive tests in the United States. It has gone to other parts of the world. Those are the things. I think the critical thing is that we know whatever happens, there will be some effect on this country. The issue is how long it will last and how much it will cost us.
Talking about the effect on this country, Dr. Fleary, if we were to talk about supply chain, what should local companies do? Should they try to incur temporary stabilization measures? Should they try to move supply chains out of China? What route
Well,
should
the
they
answer
take?
to that depends on the item that is being traded. If the item is a commodity item to the company, meaning it has no significant or great impact on the earning potential of the company, then it's fine. I think now is a good time to renegotiate some of the terms and conditions with traders in China. That is saying if the trader has a significant input into the survival of your company. But if it's something that there are many suppliers for and it's not critical to the survival of your business model, then it's okay to look for alternatives. Also, my response to this has a lot to do with the type of items that are being traded. If the type of items that are being traded are predisposed significantly to the transfer of the coronavirus, right now there are no indications of that happening. But if that is to happen, then we need to consider alternative sources of supply. But I want to say during this time, a lot of discretionary behavior and fear causes changes to happen in demand and supply. So we need, because we're not sure of the impact this is going to have, and even if we were to move away from China, what you need to also remember is the persons that you may move to may also be relying on China, because it's a global supply chain network that is interconnected. So yeah, you may think, okay, I'm not taking something directly from China, I'm taking it from another country, but they are taking it from China. So the risk that you were trying to avoid in the supply chain, all you actually do is extend your turnaround time in regards to when am I actually going to get this good, right? So you're actually delaying the process of getting supply by doing that. So if and when you decide to make such a move, you need to examine who are the suppliers of your suppliers. Yeah.
Wow, it's a long way to go.
Yeah.
We'd like to take a short break. When we return, we continue our conversation with Dr. Fleary and the Minister of Agriculture.
The winning numbers in the National Lottery online draws for Thursday, 5th March 2020. At 10:30 a.m., play with number 18 Waterboat, Mega Ball and Mega Extreme balls called. Pick 2, the numbers 35 and 22 in that order. Pick 4, the numbers 7, 8, 6 and 9 in that order. At 1 p.m., play with number 22 Rat. Pick 2, the numbers 23 and 29 in that order, Mega Ball called. Pick 4, the numbers 3, 3, 1 and 6 in that order. At 4 p.m., play with number 19 Horse, Mega Ball called. Pick 2, the numbers 13 and 18 in that order, Mega Ball called. Pick 4, the numbers 5, 0, 9 and 7 in that order. And at 7 p.m., play with number 35 Big Snake. Pick 2, the numbers 12 and 23 in that order. Pick 4, the numbers 0, 5, 2 and 9 in that order. Cashpot, the numbers 5, 2, 3, 11 and 20 in any order, and the multiplier is 2.
I'm a fashion designer from Trinidad and Tobago. I've traveled the world showcasing what we have to offer in the Caribbean. We are such a rich island with so much diversity. How can we understand who we are without seeing our own stories on television? My name is Claudia Pigas, and I believe our stories start right here on TTT.
Welcome back. We continue our conversation here on the impact of the COVID-19 on Trinidad and Tobago's food security, the economy, business sector, and everyday life. Joining us on set, as we mentioned earlier, we have the Minister of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries, Clarence Rambharat, also joining us, economist, management scientist, and lecturer at the Arthur Lockjack Global School of Business, Dr. Kevin Fleary. Minister, as we were talking during the break, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about China in particular and how we rely on the extent to which we rely on China for imports, and if you foresee any possible quarantine on our imports from China.
Well, imported food fall into different categories. If the meat that is imported, the ministry has responsibility for that, and any importation of meat requires import permits and a lot of certification. We bring fish in from China, tilapia in particular. So any meat product or fish product has to come in with an import permit, and that is where we exercise some level of control. There is no need to hold the product because the certification is provided in advance. It's an electronic system, and the ministry would issue the appropriate import permits. So that is not really something that is at risk. We also import packaged products from China. Now, there are two issues: what is in the package and the package itself. A lot of these packages are going to be handled by industrial machines, and there may be limited human contact. But if there have been some stories this week about the possibility of coronavirus being transmitted via money.
Yes.
So is there a risk? It might be a very low risk but is there a risk when we have human handling of packages, whether they're food packages or not? Will the Ministry of Trade impose any restrictions? I have not heard my colleagues say anything as yet, but I keep saying that we rely on the global community to provide us with information, and we ourselves try to get information on what is happening and what is happening around the world. The key issue is that no government, including our government, will put the country at risk in relation to food safety or in relation to anything that is likely to affect the health of the population. But it's something that we have to continue to monitor. To say that we would quarantine or we would impose restrictions, it is not something we could do now, but we have to watch. We understand the potential for risk, even if it's the smallest risk.
Yes. Now, Dr. Fleary, the minister spoke about money. Do you see this? Do you see the possibility of Trinidad and Tobago making bigger strides towards a paperless society in light of this? Do you see a silver lining, perhaps, because of COVID-19 and the impact it can have?
Well, what I would like to say is I hope that we see the need for such things. So, in an earlier conversation, someone highlighted the customs and excise bond,
Yes.
right? This is for quality management. If something happens to goods coming, food products coming to the country and we quarantine it, it's also for quality management. I think how we choose to monitor and evaluate things coming into the country is important, because if we have delays, right now we must be in a position as far as supply chain network and taking advantage of the changes that's happening in the region, we must develop some speed, right?
Yes.
And if anything that delays our ability to perform at this time, we will not be able to benefit from the changes to the supply chain in the region, right? And anyone who knows me at Untitled Chapter knows that I am very passionate about supply chain and the influence of China on that supply chain in the region. So now actually is an excellent time for us to have these type of conversations. So I'm really happy that you invited me here this afternoon, Funa, to have these type of conversations, and I hope other business entities are having these type of conversations, because now it's a opportune time. Yes, we need to put safety first, but now is an opportune time to have some planning initiatives in place and discussions to take advantage of these things. And I want to say that working differently and using technology is the only way, right, that we could move forward as a productive society.
Working differently and
That's
using
right.
technology. So I'd like to talk to you a little bit also about flexi time and that sort of thing. But before I do so, Minister, today I received a text from a friend in LA saying that the supermarkets are out of toilet paper. They're going short on basic things like Lysol and hand sanitizers. We are also hearing in Trinidad and Tobago a lot of people panicking, and they're going to the groceries and buying all their canned items and that sort of thing. What sort of advice do you have for us, for those who might be tempted to do such things?
Well, I saw a headline quoting my colleague, the Minister of Health, today, and he says, use your common sense. Now, I understand that people need, so I also heard this morning that one particular retailer was out of hand sanitizer. Now, you need to, the Ministry of Health has just issued a bulletin, I believe it's bulletin number 2, on some guidance, and what I have picked up from that is that the first piece of advice is to wash your hands. And in cases where you do not have access to soap and water, then you access the sanitizer. So I understand people wanting to put the health of their families and themselves first, but you also have to relax a little bit and plan and avoid the panic situation. So I understand that people want to stock up, they will want to take the precautions. They may feel that things are going to run out. There's nothing so far to indicate. I've not heard the chambers or the business people, the importers, say anything about stocks running out. There's always going to be a certain level, even in agriculture, or for example, in relation to food supply, flour. The local flour producers, the two main producers, would have feedstock in to last a few months. The imported feed for animals, you'd have some level of stock that and then you have in relation to those two commodities, you have long-term supply arrangements out of the United States. Those could be interrupted if there are human issues on the manufacturing side in the U.S., on the shipping side, on the ships that bring the commodities to the country. Those could be interrupted. We have to monitor those things. But it is a time for people to to exercise some control, use common sense, read what is put out by the Ministry of Health, follow what is happening in the news, and avoid those things that are being circulated that cause a lot of panic, things that are circulated that are not necessarily true. So try to verify information that you receive, particularly information that is received from sources you are not familiar with on social media.
Now, Dr. Fleary, you spoke a little bit about technology. Now, as a teacher, as a lecturer at Lockjack, have there been discussions so far in the event that students or even lecturers like yourself were to fall ill? How do you go about flexi time? Any sort of protocols in place for work from home? I know at Lockjack they have these classrooms where they accommodate foreign students from Guyana and that sort of thing. Are you seeing that they're going to take advantage of that?
Well, the first thing I'm going to do is knock on wood, I'm not going to fall ill. So, yes, we have facilities in place to allow online collaboration and teaching, Zoom, BBC, Blackboard Collaborate. And we can use these things, we can increase the usage of these things, I should say, in the event of an outbreak. So, as the Minister said, we too are keen on what is happening globally, and we too are sticking close to TTT and other reporters to see what is happening in regards to exposure, and we would take necessary steps if and when needed.
Now, Minister, you mentioned earlier that Florida and even California, two major food producers, they are being impacted. They've called a state of emergency. Now, Trinidad and Tobago, we import approximately $6 billion in food annually, and a large portion from North America. With a slowdown in economic growth, no doubt, what sort of plan do we have in place in the event that we seriously face a curtailment of supplies?
Well, what do we import? We import things, essentially we import things that we cannot produce ourselves or produce at a price that is economical. So our food import bill is essentially wheat, grains, oil for cooking purposes, flour, milk, meat, those things that we in the case of meat, our poultry sector is self-sufficient in the country. We produce enough table eggs for our own consumption. So there are things that we must import. A lot of it comes out of the United States. In the case of meat, we have meat from New Zealand and other parts of the world. But it all depends on the ability of the U.S. to continue to produce. So for example, our hatching eggs, even though we are self-sufficient in poultry products, we have a vibrant local processing sector. The eggs, for hatching purposes, comes out of the United States now. Dealing with risk out of the United States is not new. We had avian influenza. We've always had things relating to risks to the poultry sector. The poultry sector is able to manage, the ministry is able to manage the risks from our end. We have an excellent relationship with the USDA, and I'm not worried about that. So we have to look at it in the context of what is happening on the manufacturing side in the U.S., what inputs from for the manufacturing in the U.S. comes out of China, what human factors we may have in relation to the handling of goods, the ability to transport goods to the port, the ability to ship, the vessel on which it is shipped. I mean, if you ever have we saw with the cruise industry, if you have something where a virus can spread rapidly, it is a ship or a vessel that is transporting goods to the region. And then our ability in the country to clear goods on the port, are we going to have human impacts of coronavirus that causes delays? Those are the things we have to look at. At this time, there is nothing that suggests to me that we have problems with those supplies, but things could change rapidly, and that is what we continue to monitor.
Dr. Fleary, I'd like to extend that question to yourself as well. With respect to North America, what sort of impact can we expect, seeing that we rely on them to such a great extent?
I think that I feel confident, as the Minister said, of their ability to manage risk in the supply chain, and given their inward focus on manufacturing, I think that they have built up some capacity since that decision to now. So I don't see any significant instability happening to our supply coming from North America.
What about regionally?
Regionally, because the region, the islands are the main sector, or one of the main sectors is tourism. Yes, there is an issue there because the virus is spread from person to person, and as far as I understand, I think some islands, Martinique, has it already. So it means that these islands would have to contain it, and it means all the procedures that are being done throughout the world to contain it, which is stay at home, avoid public spaces. Even in China, when they go in public spaces, for example, the bank, the grocery, wherever, it's only if it is totally necessary, and when they do, there's someone there who is scanning individuals. Right, and if your body temperature is higher than normal, the authorities will come and take you and quarantine you. So because the first focus, as I said earlier, was containment. Yeah.
Minister, is it safe to say that we can feed ourselves, and also with respect to regional food imports, who's keeping check?
Well, in terms of feeding ourselves, we have local production of short-term crops. And we would always be. Some people are very ambitious in their expectations about the food import bill, but we would always have to import rice, flour, cooking oil. Those three are three very basic items, and peas, we import that. Some of it we import for further processing for export. But the point I want to make in relation to the food import bill is this. I understand the severe risk that coronavirus places on our locally, and we've seen the impact of it already outside of Trinidad. But I want people to remember that non-communicable diseases causes more deaths in Trinidad than I expect that coronavirus will cause. And it is an important time for us to reflect on the fact that notwithstanding the pervasiveness of technology, industrial machinery, the ability to pack and produce, for example, things without the use of human beings, at the core of the effect the coronavirus would have is human beings. And if we have to continue to be productive, we have to be healthy. And we have not. I've been saying it. When the media asked me last year about my buzzword for 2020, I said it's lifestyle. And we've been talking about this for a very long time. So this is a very important time, because if as individuals, we're going to resist the impact of coronavirus, it would be based on our own health. If you are suffering from an NCD, you will be more vulnerable. There are some people who are naturally vulnerable, the aged and the very young ones, but people who have problems with their health are going to be more vulnerable. The rest of the country, you have to focus on your long-term health and wellness. The irony is that one of the places I see being impacted right now is the gyms. I don't know if other people who go to the gym and gym owners across the country are seeing a reduction. Normally after Carnival you have a drop because people already have their Carnival bodies, but those are the types of places that you're going to see people avoiding because of the human contact. You're talking about sweat on machines, you're talking about constant human contact. But it is also the time, ironically, that we need to be strongest. So this is a good time for us to reflect on what we consume. The fact is that the more you consume fresh fruit and vegetables produced locally, and not just any fresh fruit and vegetables, the ones that your nutritionist says to you would help you in the short and in the long term, it's an opportunity for us to start changing our consumption habits, for us to focus on the consumption of water, of resting. Mm-hmm. We have a country that doesn't like to sleep. Carnival shows us that we had a very little respect for night rest. So we party into 2 and 3 hours, at 3 o'clock in the morning, and the music disturbs a lot of people in the communities. This is an opportunity for us to focus on personal wellness in the context of long-term health.
I'd like to take that further, but before I do that, the regional imports, who are keeping track of those?
Well, the regional, we have, Trinidad is an exporter to the region, and we do in fact have imports from some of the countries, starting with Jamaica, right through the islands. And as we get to the smaller islands, it's really root crops and some fruit and vegetables.
Okay.
So that those things, I will say, a lot of it comes in a very ad hoc way when you deal with the smaller islands. And those things are supposed to be monitored by the Ministry of Health at the point of sale. All food that is offered for sale is the responsibility of the public health people in the Ministry of Health. I have had discussions with them. Saeed Rahman, who heads the Director of Public Health in the Ministry of Health, is a vet by profession. He is on top of this. He's monitoring, and I have a great deal of confidence in our Ministry of Health and the technical officers and the Minister of Health and their ability to manage this on behalf of the country.
Talking about healthy lifestyles, Dr. Fleary, perhaps lecturers can ease the workload on students. Maybe it's something to consider. Your closing comments at this time.
Yeah. So I just want to highlight in regards to food and if there's any fear with the importation of food, we need to understand the supply chain of food, pre-processing, production, output, distribution. So by the time this food reaches you, it would have gone through an entire system, right? The likelihood of that food being contaminated, as far as reports globally are concerned, is low. And also, if as far as the person is concerned, food preparation is key, right? Because the coronavirus stemmed from exposure to wildlife in China that wasn't properly prepared, right? Poor sanitation practices. So I'm saying if there's any concern about the coronavirus with food, let's spend a little more time cooking that food and preparing that food to ensure that we all keep healthy in line with what the minister said.
Your closing comments, Minister?
Well, it's a good opportunity. Last year, sometime I drew attention to some things that were seized by the Coast Guard with the support of our game wardens, and some of it included. We have a lot of Venezuelans in the country now. They produce a particular white cheese. My Spanish fails me now, but I know it's something blanco. I've seen photos of it, queso blanco. I've seen photos of it on the supermarket shelves, but I've also seen videos of this cheese being offloaded in Orange Valley, in central Trinidad, and droves of people waiting there to collect it. That is a significant danger. I have sniffed and seen some of the seized products. I've seen signs of maggots in them. There is a smoked meat that is very popular. I posted it on Facebook. I was there when it was taken off the vessel. It was a Sunday. I took my own time to go down there and take the photos of the maggots in the meat and so on. That could easily be sanitized and cooked in all the empanadas and so on, and sold to the public. And I continue to warn the citizens of this country that illegally imported meat, illegally imported cheese, illegally imported wild meat, they come at a bargain, and you're prepared to take the risk, but somebody is going to die, and somebody's family is going to be severely impacted by the looseness we have in this country in relation to the handling of food, the purchase of food, the sale of food, and we really need to do better as a country.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for taking the time to join us this afternoon at TTT. We will continue our conversation on the impact of COVID-19 on Trinidad and Tobago, the economy, the business sector. I'm Rambharat. Have a good night.